Okay, part 7. No, part 8. I'm sorry, part 8. Okay, Rosemine's disappearance and return. Prince Sidiswald, Rosemine said to me, I must go up to the second floor for a moment to supply a magic tool. We had just finished the first of the Royal Academy's dedication rituals, and now was about to observe the donation of yet more mana to the library. Rosemine had some business to attend to upstairs. She had climbed up to the second floor with her retainers, following the guidance of the shoe mill's magic tools. So I moved to the first floor's reading room for the time being. The library's storage room for magic tools was cramped at the very least. It had not been designed to accommodate royals and archduke candidates with their crowds of attendants. Not all of my retainers were able to enter with me. For someone who has classes to focus on, Rosemine certainly does supply the library with an abundance of mana, I observed. Indeed, Solange replied, if not for her generous donations, it might have fallen into disuse by now. I am ever so grateful to her. We were discussing Rosemine's role here at the library when a minor clamor was heard on the floor above us. Cries of surprise reached us, drawing my attention upstairs, only to fade a short while later. Soon enough, 2 blue-robed individuals returned to us. One was Hartman, the High Priest of Ehrenfest, the other I did not know. As they both knelt before me, Hartman made a regretful appeal. Prince Sidiswald, my sincere apologies, but Lady Rosemine has asked to be given some reading time. The ceremony has now concluded, and today is for Earth Day. Under normal circumstances, this would be her day of rest. Klassenberg of the Sovereign Temple will take care of the charge of the cleanup while I perform final checks as High Priest. Might I ask you to grant my lady's request for a brief reprieve? Rosemine had come to the library on business, and with a prince no less, so I struggled to believe she had dropped everything to read. It was true that she had a shockingly rude tendency to block out the rest of the world once absorbed in a book, but she possessed at least a modicum of reason before picking one up. Something must have happened. Something they did not wish to mention in front of Solange and my retainers. I shall permit Rosemine to read, I said. In return, I must ask you to accompany me to the farthest hall to perform the final checks. Understood. Daniel, take care of the rest here. The other blue priest, Daniel, nodded and returned upstairs. After gathering my retainers and saying farewell to Solange, I exited the library with Hartman. We had just started toward the central building when I gave him a sound-blocking tool and said, Now then, what happened to Rosemine? She vanished whilst applying mana. I swallowed the urge to ask what madness he was spouting and smiled. She vanished, did she? Is there nothing more you can tell me? No. The 2 Shumos claimed she was taken to Gramps. I'd asked for more information, since I did not recognize the name, but they told me only that he is someone old and powerful. Does the royal family know any more about him? Hartman was looking ahead of us and wearing a smile so as to not arouse my retainer's suspicion, but his emotions were thoroughly disturbed. I could sense an overwhelming enthusiasm bubbling within him. He did not seem to be lying. In the first place, he had no reason to lie to a member of the royal family. Do you know when Rosemine will return, I asked. Did the magic tool say anything? I would not normally have cared about such an idea, or such a tale, but Rosemine was special. She had agreed to join the royal family in the spring and obtain the Grucheshite for me. That we had lost track of her was immensely problematic. I do not, Hartman replied. She might be gone for days, or she might have already returned. In any case, Ehrenfest would rather this matter be kept secret. We intend to claim that Rosemine collapsed from exhaustion shortly after the dedication ritual, and that she's currently bedridden. I shall inform my father of what truly happened to her, I said. We will preserve your secret until next Earth Day. If she remained missing for over a week, we would need to hold a family meeting. She was that important to us. Hartman thanked me, evidently relieved to have been given more leeway. By the time we arrived at the auditorium, the Sovereign Temple had finished cleaning up. I got to work sealing the farthest hall while Hartman looked around as a representative of the nobles. That night I told my father about Rosemine's disappearance and Ehrenfest's intention to disguise it as a bout of illness. He sighed in response, a frown creasing his brow. We did not have enough information to come to any decision. If she really could return at any moment, then it would be wise not to cause a stir, he said. We shall act as Ehrenfest desires. We concluded our discussion by agreeing that if she did not return by the following Earth Day, the date of the Med Noble dedication ritual, we would gather with the rest of the royal family to discuss her disappearance. An entire week had passed. Since Rosemine was nowhere to be seen. My first course of action was to speak with Hildebrand, who was eager to participate in his first religious ceremony. I gave him clear instructions to ask Ehrenfest about Rosemine's health. Then I told Anastasis and Eglantine that I wished to speak with them after dinner. Whoa! Eglantine was pregnant? Okay. That makes sense. No wonder he was so freaking protective of her. She was pregnant. Okay. Did not know that. Okay. Eglantine had given birth to a girl at the end of autumn and was already overburdened, so allowing her a chance to eat first seemed wise. Nahalaj had given birth to a son during autumn last year when she was still my first wife. Eglantine's pregnancy had come to light half a year ago. or half a year later, as the result of a most bizarre occurrence during the Archduke Conference while praying at one of the shrines. She had received a message from a divine voice informing her that she was with child. It had instructed her to stop praying, for she was expanding her mana and placing a burden on her body, and then returned the mana she had given up in the form of a blessing. Great care had been taken to keep Eglantine's pregnancy a secret, but the revelation had thrown the royal family into disarray. Her mana duties had subsequently been given to Nahalat, who had completed the minimum amount of nursing for her child, and Adolphine, to whom I was now married. She had also been forbidden from circling these shrines so that she could pour mana into her child. To keep the birth of her new child a secret, Eglantine was still carrying out her professional duties at the Royal Academy. She was receiving some support from Nahalaj, who was teaching a few grades in her stead, but her postpartum aches meant she was still struggling with her workload. That would explain why she looked a little different to Rosemine before. Nonetheless, Eglantine had ardently wanted a child. I considered it only natural that she should need to work hard. Nahalaj had needed to welcome Adolphine as my first wife while carrying my firstborn son. Then she had needed to hurry back to her administrative duties because of Eglantine's pregnancy. I would not listen to Anastasius' complaints about his wife having too much on her plate. In truth, I wish that Eglantine and Anastasius had waited for Adolphine and me to have a son before conceiving a child of their own. You kind of really can't control that when you're having sex. Because, it's either gonna happen or it's not. It's up to chance, essentially. Because they don't know anything about, ovulation cycles and all that. At the very least, I thought they should have waited for Rosemine to join the royal family and obtain the Grutushite. Then we might have had more royals available to supply mana. It certainly is worth celebrating the royal family's growth, but Father is much too soft. If not for the abundance of mana we were securing this year by holding multiple dedication rituals, and the revelation that Rosemine was close to obtaining the Grutushite, Eglantine's pregnancy would not have been good news. If nothing else, I was relieved that she had given birth to a girl. Ob Klassenberg was already doing everything in his power to increase his Deji's strength. So if she had given birth to a boy instead, he probably would have pushed to make Anastasius the next king. The royal family was weak without the Grutushite, but in an era that had no Grutushite at all, we were forced to put on heirs nonetheless. If Eglantine truly wished to halt Klassenberg's ambitions and bring stability to Jürgensmith, it would have made more sense for her to postpone having a child. Though I recognize that this is almost entirely Anastasius' fault, but how can I not blame Eglantine too? She was the only one who could have stopped him. True. Yeah, it takes two to tango on this one, so it's both their faults. But still, you can't, like I said, you can't really control if you're going to have a kid when you're having sex. Over dinner, Hildebrand reported on the day's dedication ritual. The divine instruments had indeed shown, but the flow of mana hadn't been strong enough for the statues wielding them to shoot out pillars of the same divine colors as they had with Rosemine. Hildebrand was making his disappointment perfectly clear, but he was still glad to have finally taken part in a ritual, or ceremony. Once we had eaten, Anastasius and Eglantine joined us. We royals cleared the room of our retainers and took hold of sound blockers. Then I informed everyone of Rosemine's disappearance. I conveyed that she had abruptly vanished on the library's second floor, and that according to these two shoe mills, she had gone to see someone called Gramps. What? Hildebrand asked, his eyes widening. Rosemine isn't actually bedridden. I shook my head. Ehrenfest asked us not to cause a stir. Speaking of which, what did they say during today's ceremony? Nothing out of the ordinary. They told me that Rosemine was still unwell and that they appreciate our concern. In other words, they intended to continue lying about her disappearance. Well, of course, they don't want her to cause any problems. Eglantine, how was the Royal Academy, I asked. Did anyone there know the truth about Rosemine's absence? I do not believe so. Everyone merely accepted that she was once again bedridden. Well, except for Professor Farlam, I suppose. She was quite adamant that such a prolonged bout of illness was abnormal. What was Farlam again? I searched my memories and recalled one professor who was particularly hostile towards Rosemine. Ahrensbach, due to send us more respectable teachers. Though the same goes for Ehrenfest. Well, I mean, Herscher's better than Farlam, at least. At least Herscher actually cares about, doing her job. Actually, what am I saying? Or actually not being discriminative towards other students. Because Farlam obviously is hostile towards Rosemine and anybody from Ehrenfest for that matter. But Herscher isn't. I mean, she took a freaking apprentice from Ahrensbach of all places. I was also reminded of Herscher and her unilateral focus on research, which in turn reminded me of the sovereign nobles we had sent back to Ehrenfest. It was a duchy we knew shockingly little about. Our divergent perspectives made it hard to tell what they were thinking, but we most likely obtained some valuable intelligence this year. Eglantine continued, Lady Rosemine's absence has not caused any notable changes within the Royal Academy. Certain individuals are more worried than others, and even sent personal letters of concern, but she was sickly to begin with, and tended to hurry back to Ehrenfest as soon as she was finished with her classes. Her absence seemed normal, if anything. Lady Rosemine was a strange honor student. She skipped so many classes that it was more unusual to see her attend unusual to see her attend one. Some students rarely even saw her. Though many duchies are attempting to socialize with Ehrenfest to meet her once again, Lord Wolfrid and Lady Charlotte are the only ones participating. It truly was a year like any other. And despite the circumstances, Ehrenfest students were largely unaffected. Once a week had passed since one of the Archduke candidates disappeared, yet they seemed fairly nonchalant. We should discuss our next move in the event that Rosamund does not return, Father said, looking downcast. The royal family was currently acting on the assumption that she would obtain the Gruterscheid for us. But if our plan fell through, we would need to change our approach. My father and I lacked the divine protections of the primary gods, meaning we would need to circle the small shrines and pray. That was much easier said than done, however. Zen candidates of the past had used the entirety of their time at the Royal Academy to accomplish such a feat, whereas we would need to balance it alongside our usual work. Furthermore, the smaller shrines had been made not by a Zent, but by a historic figure who had wished to help those lacking elements to reach certain gods. As a result, some were broken, some contained only statues, some were hard to find, and some seemed not to have been made at all. Father had obtained the protections of several subordinates by repeating the protections ritual, but I had obtained only 2. On top of that, I will not be able to reach the Gruterscheid without circling the larger shrines. My situation made me appreciate what great heights Rosamund had managed to reach. She truly was extraordinary. That she had managed to create 7 pillars of light during her dedication ritual without even breaking a sweat was enough to make one's head spin. Eglantine, Father said, in the case that Rosamund does not return, you will need to begin circling the shrines as soon as you are no longer required to personally feed your baby. Father, Anastasius protested at once. That is too great of a burden to place on Eglantine and Klassenberg. I raised a hand to stop him. Now that we can finally see a path to the Gruterscheid, are we not obligated to follow it? If we are unfortunate and Rosamund does not return by the melting of the snow, we will need to take matters into our own hands. Eglantine is the only one among us who is already omni-elemental. Perhaps, but she has just given birth, Anastasius said scathingly. Father gazed at him for a moment, then gently shook his head. If we do not know Rosamund's whereabouts by the end of the Archduke Conference, I will command Eglantine to take action. By that point, she will not need to personally nourish your daughter. You will also do well to remember that Nahalat's returned to work early to support her. Now that debt must be repaid, it will be Eglantine's duty as a member of the royal family to circle the shrines. I shall do as you asked, said Trolcall. Eglantine replied with a nod and a smile. That said, I do hope Lady Rosamund returns soon. I would find it terribly sad if another student came first in class this year. If she did not return to class, her 3-year streak would come to an end. The very thought was unfortunate, even though I could remember the proud smile she had given when attending the award ceremony for the first time last year. If she does not return back before the dedication ceremony for lay nobles, then let us speak with Ehrenfest, I said. We will need to discuss their plans moving forward and what they wish to do about Rosamund's classes. The duchy is strange enough that I sincerely doubt we would ever be able to guess their intentions. Anytime we acted according to normal noble standards, they treated it as bothersome. Even now I did not have the slightest idea of what they wanted us to do. Rosamund was soon to become a royal, but she and Ehrenfest would end up being unknown elements within our family. Even trying to give her orders would be complicated, considering that she was the one due to obtain the Gruterscheid. It would take a lot of very cautious trial and error for us to figure out how to navigate the situation. Must I marry her? Rosamund was pretty and overflowing with mana, and she was a Jurgenschmidt noble, but try as I might, every attempt I made to reach a mutual understanding with her ended poorly. Not even her temple upbringing could explain her uncanny and quite simply bizarre nature. There was something fundamentally unique about her way of thinking. Her culture, as it were, was nothing like those of the country's nobles in the sovereign temple. Facing her down in private had made that more than clear to me. At this point, I could only agree with Anastasius that Rosamund could not be given power. Jurgenschmidt would inevitably descend into chaos. The lay noble's dedication ritual came and went, but there was still no sign of Rosamund. It was finally time for us to meet with Ehrenfest, so we invited all the blue-robed nobles who had participated to a tea party, ostensibly celebrating their contributions. Because we had extended invitations specifically to the blue robes, although Rosamund's retainers and Ehrenfest Archduke candidates were invited, Klassenberg's students were not. Rosamund's retainers, now wearing noble attire rather than blue robes, entered the room behind Wilfrid and Charlotte. Their group comprised Hartmut, Cornelius, Lenore, Angelica, and 4 students. They seemed tense about participating in an event hosted by royalty, but exuded neither concern nor anxiety. We performed our greetings, demonstrated that everything was poisoned, then used an area-affecting sound blocker so that we could start discussing Rosamund. She has been missing for quite some time, I said. Are you not worried? Ehrenfest must be suffering in her absence. Of course we are worried, Wilfrid replied. But Ehrenfest has been preparing to function without her for over half a year now. Her absence is not troubling us as much as you might imagine. But cutting through the euphemisms, one could easily deduce what the boy was trying to say. As far as Ehrenfest was concerned, this Gramps person's decision to steal away Rosamund was no less troublesome than the sovereignty's attempts to do the same. My first thought was to interpret this as a sharp critique of the royal family, but knowing Ehrenfest, perhaps he had meant something else entirely. Convening with Ehrenfest is anything but straightforward. Though her long absence is a cause for concern, Hartman said, our knowledge that she is well kept keeps us from fretting too much. His peers all wore rigid smiles, but not a single one of them spoke out in protest. It was terribly strange. The royal family was genuinely considering the possibility that she might have died. How can you say that so confidently, I asked. I am able to feel my lady's mana, he replied with a smile, and if she had climbed to the towering heights, I would already have gone with her. Out of the blue, I remembered one of the terms of Rosamund's adoption. Her name sworn would go with her, whether they were underage or not. And judging by what Hartman had just said, he gave her his name then. Under normal circumstances, one would never disclose such information. But Hartman had casually announced that he was under the influence of Rosamund's mana and was even gazing appreciatively at the face stone ornament hanging from his neck. It was adorned with Rosamund's personal crest, which was present on the last page of every Ehrenfest book. Hartman continued, I do not know Lady Rosamund's location, but I can feel her mana growing stronger by the day, and at a shocking rate, might I add. It is because we know she is in good health that we can carry on with our lives. Will this Hartman be accompanying her to the sovereignty? He revels so openly in the bliss of her mana. The number of known eccentrics in Ehrenfest only increases by the day. Everything else aside, Ehrenfest was sticking to its story that Rosamund had taken ill. They were telling anyone who asked that she had been sent back home out of concern for her health. If possible, we could ask the professors to hurry Rosamund through her remaining lessons. When she returns, Wolfried ventured. Any excuse will do. We would also be grateful if you could let her stay in the Royal Academy beyond the winter months. I nodded. That would always have been necessary now that she was joining the royal family. Wolfried, there is something I must ask you, I said. The upcoming adoption will result in the cancellation of your engagement to Rosamund. How do you feel about that? I consider it an inevitable development. And to be frank, I was ill-suited to be Rosamund's fiancé in the first place. You are a better match for her than I, Prince Siggiswald. He did not seem at all perturbed that his engagement was being cancelled. One could assume that he was wrestling with more conflicted emotions on the inside, but it was an excellent display of self-control. Incidentally, he continued, if you will permit me to make a suggestion, I would advise that you start crafting charms as soon as possible. Rosamund wears so many for protection that if you do not start soon, you will most likely struggle to replace them before the engagement. That brought to mind two incidents where Rosamund's charms had unwittingly been activated, once by Roffin and another time by an Immerdink student. Considering that she would soon have this Accrutrite in her possession, more charms would absolutely be necessary to protect her. I thanked Wolfried with a cup of tea. In the end, Rosamund did not return in time for the introductory tournament or the graduation ceremony. Ortwin was made first in class in her absence, which naturally caused a stir among the duchies. Even now, Ehrenfest held to their story that Rosamund had merely fallen ill. Farlam had continuously screeched that they were lying, and that Rosamund had in truth ascended to the distant heights. So she had ultimately been plucked from the introductory tournament, relieved of her teaching role, and was sent back to Erensbach. Ha ha! That's what you get! That's what you get for causing problems! Thus was the unanimous decision made by a committee of professors at the Royal Academy. Thank the Lord for that! On a whim, I ended up visiting the library the day after the graduation ceremony. I found myself concerned about whether the magic tools Rosamund had tended to remained well. If no one supplied them with mana over the winter, and Solange had to rely on face stones from the dedication ritual, they would surely run out during the spring. I thank you ever so much for your concern, Prince Siggiswald, Solange said once I was done. She also informed me that Hildebrand and Hannelore had been working hard as library committee members, and that Wilfrid and Charlotte had delivered some mana-filled face stones since my last visit. Her reassurance calmed the nagging voice in my head. Satisfied that the library was in safe hands, I decided to return to my villa. But as I stepped out of the librarian's office and passed the door to the reading room, I paused. It was here that Rosamund had disappeared. To avoid arousing any suspicion, I decided not to inspect the second floor on the day Rosamund had vanished. More students had been visiting the library at the time, and the appearance of a prince would doubtless have caused a stir. But with the graduation ceremony now over, there wouldn't be anyone around today. I entered the reading room and climbed the stairs to the left. Ehrenfest capes? To my surprise, I wasn't alone. 3 individuals wearing dark yellow capes were at the back of the reading room. Perhaps the magic tool that Rosamund had supplied with mana was also nearby? Prince Siggiswald, one of the 3 asked. It was Ferdinand. Oh! He knows! How did he react to this? That's what I want to know. It was Ferdinand, the man for whom Rosamund had cast aside all conventions. He must have been here because he knew she was missing, not ill. Worried about Rosamund, I presume? It certainly has been a long time. Truly, might I ask what brings you here? The same as you, I would imagine. I came to inspect the magic tool Rosamund was supplying at the time. I could not come before when there were so many students around. In truth, it was convenient that Ferdinand was here. I was aware that Rosamund had disappeared whilst applying mana to one of the magic tools on the library's second floor, but that was all. I decided to start by asking what tools could even be found here. In response, Ferdinand detailed every single one, including those big and small. There was more than 10 in total. I did not know which one Rosamund had been supplying at the time of her disappearance, and as Ferdinand now lived in another duchy, it seemed safe to assume that he was equally unsure. I gave Ferdinand my thanks and turned to leave. I only made it a few steps before an exhausted murmur stopped me in my tracks. Rosamund, you always find a way to ruin my plans. Ferdinand spoke in a low voice, but his words rang out clear, perhaps due to the emptiness of the room. When I turned around, I saw him glaring at a statue of Mestinora with a book in her hand. Yep, that's where she was. Does he know where she went? And if so, is he going to try and... I don't think he would try and follow her. I don't think he's able to try and follow her. Once the students had all returned to their duchies, knights were put in place for the purpose of communication, and dormitories were shut. Ehrenfest alone sent a request to keep their dormitory open. They wanted 2 attendants, Lazetta and Grisha, 2 knights, and a chef to stay at the Royal Academy, so that they could tend to Rosamund when she returned. And a few days later, it happened. I received an ordinance from my father just as I was finishing dinner. Sigiswald, Hildebrand received a message from Ehrenfest. They want us to open the farthest hall. Hildebrand insists on going, so I must ask that you accompany him. No sooner had the birth concluded than I rose from my seat, recalling Magdalena's concerns about her son's attachment to Rosamund. I responded to my father, then sent messages to Hildebrand and Ehrenfest, telling them to meet me at the auditorium. Upon my arrival, an attendant carrying what appeared to be some cloth approached me. I am Lazetta, Lady Rosamund's head attendant, she announced. My sincerest apologies for troubling the royal family at this late hour, but my lady has appeared at the farthest hall. If we had sent a standard petition, she might have been stuck in there for days. The moon hung splendidly in the sky, fighting back some of the darkness, but it was still much too late to call on the royal family. Lazetta had decided to anyway, and in truth she had made the right call. Our convenience is trivial in the face of such news, I said. Let us hurry. Sigiswald, maybe open the door now. Be calm, Hildebrand, I replied. He was making his excitement much too obvious. At my order, the door to the auditorium was unlocked. We hurried through it, shrouded in darkness, hearing the sound of our footsteps until we reached a face-stone at the back of the room. I touched it, opening a second door, and then passed through an iridescent film into the farthest hall. Rosamund, I said, inhaling sharply. Amid the moonlight streaming in through the room's narrow windows, I could see a figure resembling Rosamund holding a glowing tablet. She looked almost magical, to the point I struggled to perceive her as a being of our world. Her hair was as dark as the night sky was wrapped... Her hair, as dark as the night sky, was wrapped around an unforgettable hair ornament bearing rainbow face stones. She turned to peer at us with eyes as golden as I remembered, and it was then that I noticed she was wearing the same high bishop robes as when she had disappeared. In many ways, she hadn't changed at all. Yet at the same time, she was almost unrecognizable. Before then, she had looked so young enough to be a new student at the Royal Academy, but the disparity between her appearance and age was nowhere to be seen. Rosamund's round, somewhat babyish face was now slim and more refined. Even her fingers were long and slender. Her body looked soft and overtly feminine, and as she had yet to come of age, she had the transient beauty of a girl approaching adulthood. It's the blessing of the gods. That was the only thought I could muster. Nothing else could describe what I was seeing. Rosamund had always been pretty, but it had never crossed my mind that she might grow into something so beautiful. As I swallowed, completely transfixed, Rosamund's retainers rushed forward from behind me. Lady Rosamund, I see you brought what I requested. Thank you ever so much, Lazetta. I am glad to see you safe. We were truly worried. Lazetta put the cloak she was holding over Rosamund, hiding her lady almost entirely. I was about to protest as I wanted a better look. No, dude, no. Keep your eyes to yourself. Actually, no. He's supposed to be her husband, so, I mean, it wouldn't be that big a deal for him to look, but, yeah, just still don't look. But I quickly suppressed the urge. Rosamund, why are you... Hildebrand asked, his voice breaking in surprise. It was no wonder he was so taken aback. Rosamund had previously been his height, but now she was more than a head taller. I visited the Garden of Beginnings, where his divinity Iwerman asked Anwalx, the god of growth, to make me larger. Then, before Hildebrand could question her any further, Rosamund unmade the glowing tablet in her hands and approached me. She had stood only as tall as my chest the last time we met. Huh? How tall is he? How many feet is he? How tall is he, essentially? Because I want to kind of figure out how tall Rosamund is. She had stood only as tall as my chest the last time we met, but now she reached as high as my chin. She was on the shorter side for an adult woman, but considering her age, it was likely that she would grow a touch more. Prince Sigiswald, she said, her previously high-pitched voice now gentle and mature. Though she had the same look in her golden eyes, now that she was taller, I couldn't help feeling that we were closer than ever. Yes, I asked. I do not wish to inconvenience you, but can we discuss the details of my absence during the Archduke conference? I must return to Ehrenfest at once to speak with the Ob. She was making no attempt to hide her urgency, and it seemed that she was looking straight through me. Okay, how many more do we have on this? Come on, I wanted to see them telling Ferdinand about this. Come on! The Royal Academy without my sister. Lady Charlotte, Lord Wolfrid, could we have a moment of your time? It was lunchtime on the Earth Day of the Archnoble's dedication ritual, and we received a visit from Rosamund's retainers. As Archduke candidates, Wolfrid and I only needed to participate in the ceremonies, but Rosamund was the High Bishop. She had to deliver the collected mana to the royal family and observe the cleanup process, among other things, so she hadn't returned to the dormitory with us. I cocked my head in response to the question. I did not see Rosamund with you. Is she taking some rest? It was unusual for her retainers to be here without their lady. Oh boy, here we go. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Him raving and ranting about all this. Hartman threw his hands up in the air, a drunken smile plastered against Rose's face. This is what we shall tell the public. Or that is what we tell the public. But in truth, Rosamund has been invited to the realm of the gods by Mestinora, the goddess of wisdom. Ah, what a beautiful miracle, praise be to the gods. I wasn't the only one dazed by his bizarre words and sudden prayer. Every single student and server in the dining hall wore a look of complete bewilderment. Paying no mind to Hartman's fervent prayers, I turned and said to my other sisters of the retainers. They held their heads in their hands, similarly troubled that he was being so strange. But Daniel at least managed an explanation. After the dedication ritual, Lady Rosamund was permitted to share some of the collected mana with the library. She went straight there with Prince Sigiswald, whereupon the magic tools asked her to supply one area in particular. The magic tools, he must mean Schwartz and Weiss. Every student in Ehrenfest knows that Rosamund supplies mana as a member of the library committee. Lady Rosamund started doing as the tools had instructed, then abruptly disappeared. Even though Daniel was only a lay noble, everyone was paying a lot more attention to him than to Hartman. I appreciated that he had given such a clear answer, but I was still at a loss. What do you mean she disappeared? I asked. There's nothing more I can say. She was standing in front of us, and then a moment later, she was gone. We do not know the details, but according to the library's magic tools, she went to see Gramps. Gramps? Wolfried repeated, a dubious look on his face. Who in the world is Gramps? Cornelius shook his head. The most they said was that he was old and powerful. Not even Professor Solange or Prince Sigiswald could tell us anything. Is she safe? We believe so, as her name-sworn retainers are still with us. The most we could do is await her return. I cast my eyes over Rosamund's name-sworn retainers, formerly of the Veronica faction. If my sister died, they would too. One could only imagine the anxiety that would rack them until she came back to us. We have already discussed the matter with Prince Sigiswald, Lenore said, looking around the dining hall. By his order, until Our Lady returns, we shall act as if she had taken ill. Hold on, let me get this straight, Wolfried interjected. Something beyond explanation has happened to Rosamund. She's alive, but we don't know when she'll return, or where she is. There's absolutely nothing we can do, so by the order of a prince, we're to act as if she's ill. Everyone on the same page? The gathered students nodded as if somewhat uneasily. Well, we don't have much of a choice in the matter, he sighed. None of the other duchies would believe us if we said she randomly disappeared, or that she was invited somewhere by the goddess of wisdom. Indeed, Lazletta said, and even if we revealed that information with good intentions, we could receive a harsh scolding from both Ob Ehrenfest and the royal family. We would also inadvertently unleash Hartman, who would start corrupting the minds of anyone who dared to listen. He would tarnish our duchy's reputation. The rest of the country would lump us together with him. Yeah, you don't want that. In complete silence, we all gazed at Hartman. He looked up, no less enthralled, and was still raving that only someone truly virtuous would receive an invitation from Mestinora. I recall something that Ernesta, one of my retainers, had told me. Hartman's campaign to establish the Saint of Ehrenfest during my sister's 2-year slumber had earned us a lot of grimaces from the other duchies. We must not unleash him, no matter the circumstances. Hartman had special permission from the Zent to be here for this dedication rituals, meaning we couldn't send him back to Ehrenfest until they had been completed in full. Everyone hold your silence to the last, Wolfried ordered, his voice tinged with despair. The fate of our duchy's honor rests with you. Everyone but Hartman nodded in response. We reported the incident to father the same day, and in response he told us to do as the royal family had instructed. Everyone, even those back in Ehrenfest, would pretend that Rosamund had simply fallen ill, until we were ordered otherwise. I can only hope Rosamund returns soon, I murmured. His name-sworn retainers were still alive, which meant she was too, but not being able to see her was still deeply concerning. 3 whole days had passed, yet Rosamund was still nowhere to be seen. How was the dormitory, I asked. I was told that some of the students were whipped into a frenzy and wanted to investigate the connection between Rosamund's disappearance and one of the Royal Academy's mysteries. Are we not at risk of them in revealing the truth to other duchies? There were various mysteries attached to the Royal Academy. The goddess statue that danced on the night of the graduation ceremony, the gazebo where the goddess of time played tricks, and the Gwen in pieces that played dinner, to name a few. But there was one in particular that was garnering a lot of attention. The disappearance of a student said to have played pranks at one of the supreme god's shrines and incurred their divine wrath. According to a report from my apprentice guard knight, Fonzel, some of our own were comparing the tale to Rosamund's current situation. There was much that occurred in the boys' room of the Arenfest dormitory that we female students were never made privy to, so I was reliant on the accounts of my male retainers. Lord Hartman caught them, so I don't believe they will spread any such information, Fonzel has answered me. Hartman apparently caught the students in question and said to them in a threatening smile, Lady Rosamund received an invitation from the gods. Do you truly believe she has done something to earn their ire? Be ashamed of yourselves, for you are too blind to see how fortunate we are to have the Saint of Arenfest. I mean, considering all the praying and everything she does to the gods, I would highly doubt that she had earned their ire. I think y'all would know anyway. Because, I mean, they're the gods. Why wouldn't you know if you had earned their ire? Fonzo continued, he said that for their sullied minds to be corrected, they would need to learn to pray with perfect form, so he forced them to pray over and over again. He broke their spirits in the process, but not even that earned them forgiveness. They are currently being made to recite all of Lady Rosamund's great deeds, as in, they are being forced to memorize them? Yes, Lord Hartman considers it even more important than their classes. The whole spectacle has deterred the other students from uttering even a word about your sister. In short, Hartman was keeping a close eye on the dormitory and threatening the students into submission by means of praising Rosamund, though there was exceptions when students caused trouble. As a girl, I couldn't go to the second floor, just as boys can go to the third. Would it be best for me to intervene as an Archduke candidate, I asked? Is my brother aware of the situation, I wonder? He is well aware. A student's being reprimanded even went to his retainers and asked that he put a stop to Lord Hartman. And what was his response? He declined, reminding the students that he had warned them to keep quiet. Those who badmouth Rosamund while Hartman can hear them have only themselves to blame, he said. Accept your fate and do as he tells you. Yep. You badmouth Rosamund? Or even do something to hurt her, and Hartman will have your head. He will. You don't want him angry. Just like Ferdinand, you don't want him angry. I understood all too well why Wilfred didn't want to get involved with Hartman. It seemed best to learn from his example and pretend to be oblivious to the entire situation. It certainly is important that the students learn not to speak lightly about Rosamund's absence, I said, and this punishment from Hartman won't impact their future as a scolding from father or the royal family would. The day after my decision to let Hartman manage the dormitory, Professor Herscher arrived out of the blue. She was our dormitory supervisor, so this might not have seemed strange at first, but everyone who knew her understood what a rare occurrence this was. I was told that Lady Rosamund has taken ill, so I came to see her, Professor Herscher announced. It isn't like her to hide away before finishing her classes. She cannot visit the library before she passes her exams, can she? I exchanged glances with Rosamund's retainers and Wilfrid. The sharp look in Professor Herscher's purple eyes demanded to know what was happening. But if the royal family hasn't explained the situation to her, we should probably keep her in the dark. As it stood, Rosamund physically couldn't take her exams. The professors were sure to consider it strange, but until the royal family contacted them or gave us new orders, it seemed wise to keep things under wraps. We should keep a close eye on her health and send word when things change, I said. For days I remained patient, but I can wait no longer, Professor Herscher shot back. Though I do not know the details of this situation, I must know your plans for your joint research with Arnsbach. Lady Rosamund is the one with all the research materials, is she not? She wore a smile, but clearly had no intention of budging on the matter. Wilfrid gave a defeated sigh. She's here for the research materials. We won't be able to fool her no matter how much we try. Brunhilde, Lysletta, my apologies, but could you take Professor Herscher to my sister's room and explain the situation, I asked. We had decided to bring our dormitory supervisor into the fold, and entrusting the explanation to Rosamund's retainers was only natural. I'd specified my sister's room to keep Hartman from getting involved. His constant raving would only slow things down. The negotiations ended with Professor Herscher agreeing to cooperate with our subterfuge and assist Rosamund with her exams and such when she eventually returned. In exchange, she took all the ingredients my sister had brought with her to make the agreed-upon magic tools for her library. Though my sister is known for finishing her classes in the blink of an eye, I said, it would still be perfectly acceptable for her to wait until the final exams like almost everyone else. Indeed, my head attendant Vanessa replied, she will surely have returned by then. That was what we told ourselves, but the following Earth Day came without any new developments. Wilfrid was currently overseeing the Men Noble's education ritual, in which Prince Hildebrand was also participating. I was simply waiting to hear from those of my retainers who were attending the ceremony. So, how was it, I asked when they eventually returned? Have any of the other duchies realized that Rosamund is missing? According to Wilfried, not even her classmates in the Archduke candidate course had noticed, but an entire week had now passed. Professor Herscher had grown suspicious, and Lady Hannelore of Dunkelfogger had sent a message expressing her concern. It was only a matter of time before people started to ask questions. Or so I thought. My apprentice attendants, Catherine and Cassandra, looked at each other before staring at me quizzically. We have no reason to believe that anyone doubts our excuse, they said. Prince Hildebrand openly expressed his concern for her health, and in a conversation with Lord Wilfrid told us to give her his well wishes. None would scrutinize the words of royalty. His well wishes, I repeated. Was that really all? Did he not follow them with orders of any kind? No, my lady, we can assume the royal family wants to maintain the status quo. They are likely working on the professors as we speak. Professor Herscher had noticed that something was amiss, but Cassandra had said there was no rumor spreading among the other teachers. My attendants continued. Our one potential cause for concern is Lady Gentian of Klassenburg. She wishes to join the library committee and is, according to Lord Wilfrid, now awaiting Lady Rosamund's recovery. She has also given us some documents related to our joint research. Is my brother going through them now, I asked? They would need to be reviewed before the Royal Academy's dedication ritual concluded, and socializing with the other duchies began. No, my lady, Lord Hartmut took them. Lady Rosamund was apparently looking forward to seeing them, so he stole them, claiming that the rest of us could make do with transcribed copies. Lord Ignaz would only slump his shoulders in defeat. It would have been better if the documents had gone to either my brothers or my own retainers, but as we had yet to finish all of our classes, I suppose the arrangement was fine. We wouldn't have been able to read them just yet anyway. Will the transcriptions be done before socializing begins, and we must discuss the results with Klassenburg, I asked. Lord Hartmut is rallying all of his fellow retainers to have them done before they must return to Ehrenfest. We may relax then. Lord Wilfrid is proactively involved with the joint research, but he has asked that all invitations be redirected to you, Catherine said with a sigh. Looking attacked and concerned. We will need to start preparing it to socialize. My brother bombarding me with invitations to girls' tea parties was something of a regular occurrence now. He likely intended to have any tea parties with Klassenburg to me while he took the results from our joint research. Should we consult Brunhilde, I asked? That would be wise, my lady. I apologize for our inadequacy. As we are but men nobles, we struggle to obtain intelligence from Klassenburg. There is little one can do about status. I ask only that you support Brunhilde however you can. The tastes of Lady Gentian, a first year, were still unknown outside of her duchy. It was the duty of attendants to meet and exchange such intelligence, but the Archduke candidates of greater duchies were normally attended to by archnobles. During first-time meetings, apprentice men attendants wouldn't receive any attention at all. Catherine and the others might have been able to get a few words in, but there was a tremendous disparity between what they said and what they and Brunhilde were able to learn. Plus, I chose my retainers on the basis that I would one day leave Ehrenfest. My archnoble retainers, responsible for tutoring the others, had since graduated, and the apprentice archnobles in grades below my own still needed to be trained. It must have been because of grandmother's tyranny. Few archnobles wished to see their children serve the archducal family, so there weren't many in my brother's year, or my own, who were willing to become our retainers. My apologies, Lady Charlotte, but I am no help at all despite being an archnoble. You are only a first year, Adeline. I do not expect you to have already associated with nobles from top-ranking duchies. I will ask Brunhilde to train you alongside Bertilde, so work hard to establish those bonds this year. Yes, my lady. Adeline was an apprentice arch-attendant in my service who had entered the Royal Academy at the same time as Bertilde. It was critically important that she socialized with top-ranking apprentice attendants while Brunhilde was still a student. Once my sister entered the Royal Academy and granted Ehrenfest her protection, Bertilde and Adeline would stand among the vanguard of our dormitory and needed to interact with the top-ranking duchess alongside Vanessa. 10 whole days have passed, I mused aloud. Is Rosamund truly okay? Charlotte! Wilfrid sprang up out of his chair to stop me. I clapped a hand over my mouth mere moments later, but it was already too late. My brother glanced at Hartmut, groaned, and sat back down with a hand on his forehead. Oh God, here we go. That's why he told her to not say anything! Because he didn't want Hartmut to go on and on and on and on! Fear not, my sister's greatest advocate proclaimed. Lady Rosamund is growing by the day. I am able to feel even the slightest changes in her manner. How foolish of me. Thus began another of Hartmut's long-winded speeches about Rosamund. We would need a way to divert his attention, so I turned to my sister's other name-sworn retainers. How very delightful that my sister is growing. Still, hearing those declarations from Hartmut alone makes me wonder just how credible they are. If name-sworn retainers can feel their lady's mana, should the rest of you not be experiencing the same thing? Hartmut must have realized that I was indirectly telling him to shut up and allow the others a chance to speak. He went quiet to focus on Roderick and Matthias. Roderick stammered. I do feel a very slight improvement in my brewing and the like, so I see no reason to doubt that her mana is growing. One thing I am curious about is whether it means her body is growing as well. And Matthias nodded. I don't feel it as keenly as Hartmut does, but I can tell that Lady Rosamund's acquiring more mana. I can sense her mana increasing and becoming more stable, so as Hartman says, her vessel may be growing. I cannot say for sure, though, Lorenz said. I nodded. If nothing else, they seemed a lot less certain than Hartman. Putting the question of her physical growth aside, there was no longer room for doubt that my sister's already vast mana quantity was increasing further still. But as I was feeling impressed, I noticed that Hartman was grimacing in displeasure at his fellow namesworn. I swiftly attempted to cover them. The main takeaway from this is that nobody can compare to Hartman when it comes to loyalty and compassion. Hartman, I must ask that you continue to devote yourself as my sister's greatest retainer. As you wish, Lady Charlotte, he replied, a truly satisfied smile arising on his face. The other nearby retainers all sighed in relief, and from among them, Lady stepped forward. Lady Charlotte, Lord Wolfrid, I wish to deliver a report. As it turned out, Lady Hannelore had coordinated with Rosemine's attendants to lend us a book. Lady had wanted to write a letter of thanks in my sister's place and upheld our end of the exchange. Rosamine had already decided which book she would give. If you see Lady Hannelore during class or a tea party anytime soon, do thank her for the book, Lady continued. I cannot read right, guys. I guess because it's the last video until volume 8 comes out. Oh, God. Those from Dunkelfelder are quite worried about my sister, aren't they? I replied. Indeed, I shall thank her during our next tea party together. Wolfrid gave a firm nod of agreement. Yeah, Lady Hannelore is the type to be real thoughtful and considerate. She doesn't get that there's nothing for her to worry about. Hartman and the others say that Rosemine's fine. It's not about needing to worry. You should worry about her anyway. A deep sigh escaped me. I doubted that Wolfrid even noticed the icy looks Rosemine's retainers were now giving him. The lay noble's dedication ritual ended without incident. Hartman and the others had carried out the preparations to a T, meaning the rest of us only needed to do as instructed and chant the prayer. I will need to thank my father, who had asked that the adults be permitted to stay at the Royal Academy and assist us with the ceremonies, and the Zend, who had actually allowed it. If we students had tried to balance everything ourselves, it would have been a truly nightmarish experience. Welcome back, Lady Charlotte, Edeline said upon my return, looking tense. Lady Brunhilde has arranged a meeting. There is something urgent she wishes to discuss. Having decided to prioritize the meeting over changing my clothes, I asked Kathleen and the others to prepare tea while I sent an ornament of acknowledgement to Brunhilde. Lady Charlotte, I am delighted that you accepted my invitation, Brunhilde said when I arrived, and you came before even taking a moment to change. I am ever so grateful. This is an urgent discussion, correct? I asked and held out a sound blocker. Will this be necessary? She accepted it with a slight smile, then got straight to the point. Hartman brought us a letter of invitation from Prince Sigiswald. I doubt this concerns me, I said. The royal family only ever wished to speak with Rosamine. If she was absent, Wolfrid, my brother was the more likely candidate to receive such an invitation, especially considering that he was older than me. So I wasn't quite sure what Brunhilde wanted. It is addressed to both you and Lord Wolfrid, and to Lady Rosemine's retainers. On what basis did Prince Sigiswald select these participants? Hartman suspects they want to discuss Lady Rosemine's status under the guise of praising those who perform the religious ceremonies. The meeting is limited to those who wore ceremonial robes, thereby excluding Lady Gentian of Klassenburg. Klassenburg was much closer to the royal family than Ehrenfest, but they were also considered an equal participant in our joint research. Their lack of invitation only further reinforced Hartman's prediction. Lady Rosemine's move to the sovereignty will most likely be discussed, Brunhilde said. Thus, I would advise you and Lord Wolfrid to exclude your retainers. That must be difficult when my sister's retainers are participating. Perhaps you could say that only those who visited the temple with her in Ehrenfest were invited? Besides, this is an excellent opportunity for Lady Rosemine's namesworn and me to introduce ourselves formally to Prince Sigiswald. They will soon be moving to the sovereignty, whereas I am due to become a member of our duchy's archducal family. In short, we really couldn't bring any retainers other than Rosemine's. Very well, I said, I shall convince my retainers. Moreover, we will need to align ourselves with Ob Ehrenfest. I would like you to reach a conclusion with Lord Wolfrid, then report back to me. Brunhilde had apparently tried to discuss the matter with my brother's retainers, only for them to sneer at her attempts to act like a member of the archducal family before her starbinding. There was no more headway she could make with them alone. Oh my god, someone smack his retainers. My brother remains critical of your engagement to our father, and shows no signs that his own engagement is about to be cancelled, so his retainers did not realize how vulnerable they are right now. I mused, how troublesome. Even now, Wolfrid is unable to control his retinue. It is a retainer's duty to do as their lord or lady instructs. Thus, when the cancellation is announced, I will advise Lord Wolfrid to think carefully about the futures of those who serve him. As far as Brunhilde was concerned, my brother wasn't putting much thought into the future. That was somewhat understandable, as he was being asked to maintain the status quo, and didn't have any handovers to rush through, but not even I could grasp his intentions. What does Wolfrid intend to do after the cancellation is announced? Good question. What does he intend to do? Our meeting with the royal family was underway. I had assumed that my discussion with Wolfrid had put us on the same page, and I could merely sit back as a tag-along, but I was mistaken. Of course we are worried, but Ehrenfest has been preparing to function without her for over half a year now. Her absence is not troubling us as much as you might imagine. Wolfrey, was that not rude? One might think you were sharply critiquing the royal family's decision to adopt Rosemine. My brother had surely meant to say that Ehrenfest was almost ready for Rosemine's departure and that the royal family had nothing to worry about, but was that how our host had interpreted it? Prince Sigiswald was looking notably quizzical. I had neglected to prepare enough Wolfrey countermeasures. As my stomach began to ache, I exchanged a look with Brunhilde. She didn't seem at all taken aback. Instead, she gestured to Hartman as if she had expected this to happen all along. My sister's retainers weren't to be doubted. I watched on with hope, only for Hartman to launch into a long-winded speech. No, save that for the dormitory! I wanted to cry out in anguish, but to my surprise, Hartman's lecture actually worked. Prince Sigiswald was frowning at the crested face stone now being held aloft, likely having forgotten all about Wilfried. On the surface, it seemed as though Hartman was simply babbling on, but he was actually redirecting the conversation to the rumors about Rosemine and what would we need to do when she had returned. How was he capable of such an impressive feat? It made no sense. We will return to Ehrenfest after this meeting and claim that we are taking the ill Lady Rosemine with us, Hartman said. We had promised to report as much to Father. Once the direct discussion had settled down a little, Prince Sigiswald asked my brother what he thought about his engagement being cancelled. I consider it an inevitable development, and to be frank, I was ill-suited to be Rosemine's fiancé in the first place. You are a better match for her than I, Prince Sigiswald. I gasped. He had started strong, but that second part was so terribly rude. Yeah, essentially saying that you two are birds of a feather, and that essentially she's not very good. I can't even remember what I was going to say. You essentially was rude. And then you advised the prince to replace Rosemine's charms before their engagement. Wilfried, what are you saying? I shot a nervous glance at Prince Sigiswald, but his face betrayed no emotion. That made the situation even more terrifying. But then the prince gave Wilfried a cup of tea. Wait, Prince Sigiswald was responsible for my brother losing his position as the next Ab, right? Was he on guard all this time, fearing that there might be tension between them? If so, his provision of tea implied that these concerns were now gone. A relieved sigh escaped me. If nothing else, I could rest assured that my brother hadn't caused offense. We appreciate your aid. I pray that Ehrenfest's dedication ritual goes just as well. Hartman and the others were returning home, so the rest of us had gathered to say farewell. Our excuse henceforth was going to be that Rosemine had returned to Ehrenfest for its dedication ritual. It wouldn't be so hard to sell, so the air in the dormitory relaxed almost immediately. At least everything's back to normal, Wilfried remarked. Rosemine's disappearance was a big surprise, but at least we'll get some peace for once. Wilfried, what are you saying? I exclaimed. Am I wrong? We have barely anything to write about in our reports this year. Hartman and the others might be gone, but think about Rosemine's student retainers. They could neither complain nor protest, since Wilfried was a member of the Archducal family, but their impression of him only ever seemed to get worse. Why did my brother always make such unnecessary remarks, displeasing those around him in the process? I, for one, am troubled by our sister's absence. All those who've reached out to Ehrenfest do so only to connect with her. Hasn't that always been the case? We'll make it through the rest of the year just fine. That isn't what I'm worried about. Rosemine's move to the sovereignty would completely change how other duchies viewed and socialized with Ehrenfest. In an ideal world, we would spend this year attending social events with her, showing the rest of the country how well we got along, and securing ourselves better treatment moving forward. It wasn't something we could do without her. I wish that I could speak my mind, that I could tell my brother exactly what was bothering me, but I'd already been sworn to silence. The most I could do was sigh. Please return soon, Rosemine. Please. It was time for everyone to socialize. As was now the norm, Ehrenfest interactions with other duchies had mostly been entrusted to my brother and me. It wasn't an ideal situation, but at least Brunhilde was around to help us. She was currently Rosemine's retainer and a future member of our Archducal family, which allowed us to broach more topics than ever before. It was heartening to have her support. Lady Gentian of Klassenbrugge said that Rosemine promised to accept her into the library committee, I announced. How shall we react? She seems to have orders from her Ab and wishes to meet with our sister even when she is unwell. Lady Gentian had asked us to arrange a meeting as soon as Rosemine's health showed even the slightest improvement. It was a troubling development, and as I wasn't a member of the library committee, I didn't even know what the induction process entailed. Was the promise even real to begin with? As I recall, Lady Rosemine received the request through Lady Eglantine, Brunhilde replied. I would suggest we refused it via the same channel. Or perhaps we could lead the matter to Prince Hildebrand, who is also a member of the library committee? Brunhilde's idea to have the royal family deal with the request they thrust upon us sounded exactly like something Rosemine would come up with. Perhaps they were more similar than I expected, though I kept that thought to myself. Lady Gentian's request aside, nobody seemed to be too concerned about Rosemine's health. A few people had sent their well wishes as expected, but that was about it. On the one hand, I was relieved that the truth hadn't leaked to other duchies, but on the other, I was a little upset. Now is not the time to be sentimental, Brunhilde said, having read me like a book. We can expect to be questioned even more aggressively during the Erduchi tournament. We would do well to get the Ob and the royal family on the same page before then. Father will tell them she is unwell, as he has told everyone, but on that note, what manner of hairpin did you receive from him, Brunhilde? You proposed that a matching one be given to my mother, did you not? Because my sister's engagement to Wilfrid was being cancelled, the Lies Gang's hopes were now rested entirely on Brunhilde's children. Brunhilde was about to take on a role she would find even harder to navigate. I shan't break the promise I made to prop up Lady Florencia, she said. Thus, you will need to find a worthy husband of your own, Lady Charlotte. But would any man agree to marry a mere interim Ob? Someone of a higher-ranking duchy might even insist that they deserve to rule instead. Given the current trend of archducal families adopting new members, perhaps you could set your sights on those younger than you. In the event that Brunhilde became pregnant, I would need to become the Ob before the baby's baptism, wear down the Lies Gang's power, and then wait for Melkor to grow enough to take over from me. To further smooth the handover process, I would want my husband to be someone of a similar rank, while Melkor would want to marry someone from a top-ranking duchy. Socializing season concluded, and the Interduchy tournament began. We received a flood of questions from the other duchies as anticipated, but there was nothing we could do except repeat that Rosemond had taken ill. Uncle seemed very suspicious of us, though. He's even started trying to gather intelligence on his own. We haven't even told the truth of the matter to my uncle or his retainers. Those from Arensbach were keeping too close an eye on us. As for the royal family of the Sovereign Knight's Order, the most we could do was ask Blazetta to deliver the package Rosemond had prepared before her disappearance. The absence of any food or letters would hopefully alert them to the highly unusual circumstances. Oh, but how comforting it would be if we could speak with Uncle about this. Perhaps because he was always cleaning up Rosemond's messes, I thought he might be able to work out why she had disappeared. Father ended up meeting Brunhilde during her graduation, escorting her during her graduation, indicating to everyone that she was to be his second wife. In truth, it was strange to see a woman other than mother at his side. No man was more devoted to a single woman, and yet... Wilfrid, I can see a crack in your smile, Mother warned with a calm expression. My brother had made no attempt to hide his displeasure back at the dormitory. He was only trying to maintain a proper noble facade now because Mother had summoned him and his retainers to a meeting room and given them a harsh scolding. As I watched their exchange, Mother turned to me. Did you see the color Brunhilde chose for her hairpin? I said she should go with something that suits her, but instead she decided to use the color of my hair in our duchy. To think she would make such a statement, and with the hair ornament she was given by her fiancé for her graduation ceremony. I gazed upon Brunhilde's bright crimson hair. As my mother had said, there was an ochre hairpin adorning it, a clear show of resolve. Her decision makes sense, I replied. Brunhilde does not seek father's love. She cares far more about avoiding friction with you and keeping the Lies Gang nobles under control. On a related note, your hairpin suits you wonderfully. These crimson mid-fairs make you look even more vibrant. Mid-fairs were flowers symbolic of cooperation. They were a very appropriate choice, especially as Brunhilde and my mother were showing their support for one another through the colors they had chosen to wear. Mother laughed and gave me a light pat on the head. Next time we will order a hair ornament for you as well, Charlotte. Once the graduation ceremony was over, it was time to get back to Ehrenfest. Rosemond had yet to return, but we had secured permission to keep our dormitory open for when she eventually did. We ended up leaving 2 attendants, 2 guards, and 1 chef and 2 servants behind, and it wasn't until the day after the feast celebrating spring that we received a message from them. I was eating breakfast in my chambers when an ordonnance arrived to inform me that Rosemond had returned to the Royal Academy last night, and shall soon be returning to Ehrenfest. As soon as I'd eaten, I discussed the change of plans with my retainers and started getting ready to meet my sister. I rushed out of my room and went downstairs to find that Wilfrid and Melkor were waiting for me. The 3 of us headed to the teleportation hall. Mother, Father, and Lord Bonifacius were already there when we arrived, as were Rosemond's retainers, who were hearteningly anxious. The teleportation circle filled with mana. It started shining black and gold, and the shimmering lights faded to reveal 3 figures. I intended to give Rosemond a normal welcome, but when she finally became visible, I was too shocked to say anything at all. She was breathtakingly beautiful. Hartman had repeated to an obnoxious degree that she was growing, but I never expected to see her mature so suddenly. Rosemond's dazzling hair, long and as dark as night, swayed majestically as she looked around the room with uncertain eyes. She was now taller than me, and seemed so much like an adult that I doubted anyone would use the word adorable to describe her ever again. A sigh escaped me. I was struck with the urge to admire her refined, almost sculpturesque beauty from every angle, but from now until the end of time. Sylvester, it is good to see you again. I am sorry to have worried you. Forgive me for being so blunt, but may I have a moment of your time? There is something extremely important we must discuss. Rosemond greeted our father, then immediately requested a meeting. She looked exhausted, but she still agreed to go straight to the Archduke's office. There was something strange about her now. Like she existed on a higher plane of existence. It forced me to remember the overwhelming gap I'd noticed between us during my baptism ceremony. What should I do? It feels like Rosemond suddenly left my world and entered another. have no idea how she got in that world. Feeling daunted, I merely watched as she spoke with Lord Bonifacius. Wilfred, on the other hand, strode over and gave her a beaming smile as if nothing had changed. Hartman wouldn't shut up about how much you'd grown, he said. Looks like he was telling the truth. That's a shocker. I'm a beauty now, wouldn't you agree? Not even I could believe it when I first looked in the mirror. Yep, you really are, but you didn't grow on the inside, did you? Somehow the gap between your looks and your personality is even worse now. Seeing their casual conversation brought me back to my senses. Rosamund's appearance had changed, and she was taller than me now, but she was still my sister. I took a deep breath, both impressed and grateful that my brother had acted without the slightest hesitation, then finally spoke. Welcome back, sister. Okay, here we go. This is, after, dang it. This is with the whole vision thing. You can lock Lady Letizia in here, then move her onto one of the ships when they arrive. The same goes for the woman with her. Oh, right, you don't have the authority to enter the northern and western buildings. Use this to pass through the barriers. I shall entrust you with contacting our allies. Lord Leonzio, let us go to our state. Having finished instructing her guard knights, Lady Detlinde approached me with a pleased smile. Lady Letizia, who was trembling violently and so overcome with despair that she could no longer speak, was to be locked with her apprentice attendant inside the room where Waswitha had been imprisoned. Our next course of action was clear. We would raid the chambers of Lady Letizia and Lord Ferdinand in the northern and western buildings, respectively take whatever face stones and magic tools we found within, then return our loot to Lonzanov. Of course, we would put Lady Letizia on the same ship. My heart goes out to her, it really does, but what else could we have done? Wait, who's replying? Who's doing this? Okay, this is, Lord Leonzio. Okay, this is Leonzio's point of view, okay. As a manor-rich woman in Lonzanov, Lady Letizia will be doted on by more men than she could count. In many ways, I expected that she would have a much happier life than here in Arensbach, where she was forced to live under Lady Detlinde, a woman who utterly despised her. I glanced at the door, then escorted Lady Detlinde to the castle's front gate. Oh, yes, she said, I will need to inform Mother of our planned success. She must be on the edge of her seat waiting news of my victory. Several days ago, Lady Georgine had gone by carriage to wait in a province bordering Ehrenfest. Her location was apparently as close to the border barrier as she could get before magic tools in the shape of white birds could stop being able to reach her. Ordinands, as they were called. She was there now, waiting for one such bird to inform her of the plan's outcome. I have not been told what she intends to do next, but it doubtless involves taking Ehrenfest as her own. In all things, Lady Georgine cared only about taking Ehrenfest. Her phrasing and demeanor had made it clear to me that she saw Lonzanov, Arensbach, the sovereignty, and even her own daughter as no more than tools to help her realize that singular purpose. Lady Detlinde had received instructions to contact Lady Georgine once Lord Ferdinand was a face stone, yet she had returned from the Manor Replenishment Hall empty-handed. She had even outright said that the poison hadn't worked. To remedy the situation, she had put a staff-sealing bracelets on his arms before leaving him on a replenishment circle which would slowly drain all the mana out of his body. But she still hadn't confirmed that he was dead. Is it truly wise to send a report before obtaining Lord Ferdinand's face stone? I asked. Lady Detlinde had an innocent grin spread across her face. She sincerely believed that her mother would rejoice over her success, but I couldn't see Lady Georgine doing that at all. She was a calculating woman who would dryly move whatever pieces were available to her. If one plan failed, she would advance another to compensate or start entirely from scratch. A vague report stating that Lord Ferdinand would die soon enough was certain to earn her ire, but at the same time, hiding the error such that it would not be corrected was more likely to result in a fatal misstep that would unravel everything. Oh my, would you have me wait in the Manor Replenishment Hall until his mana drains completely? Perish the thought. Not even that vicious poison turned him into face stone, and they say that nothing is more dangerous than a wounded beast. She's not wrong. Was it not precisely because he's so dangerous that Lady Georgine told you to confirm his death and give his face stone to Lonzanov? Lady Detlinde had actively kept me apart from Lord Ferdinand, so I had interacted with him only during our initial greetings. For that same reason, most of my information about him was from other people. Lady Detlinde had told me he was a cold and profoundly jealous man who objected to everything she'd said and did, whereas Lady Georgine saw him as the greatest threat to her plans, a dangerous opponent who consistently came first in class during his time at the Royal Academy. He's also deeply hated by the Sovereign Knight Commander. Once again, I didn't have the full picture, but it seemed that Lord Ferdinand was a face stone who had somehow slipped out of the Adalgisa Sevilla. I recalled the Sovereign Knight Commander's insistence that he be returned to his proper form and sent to Lonzanov as intended. Personally, I do not resent Lord Ferdinand. A decade had passed since Jurgen Smith's civil war when the Adalgisa Sevilla had been closed and the trade of face stones between our countries had ceased. We now had Lady Detlinde assisting us, and our hunt tonight would secure us higher quality face stones than ever before, but one could still never have too many. In truth, I'd been eager to see how great a face stone we would obtain from a seat of Adalgisa, in order to marry into a greater duchy. Now that he was being completely drained of mana, however, his face stone would invariably be empty. It was a terrible waste. No, I would not have you wait at all, I replied. If you simply dealt with him the finishing blow, then you would obtain both his face stone and confirmation of his death. Lady Detlinde grimaced and shot me a stern glare. Dear me, you should never ask a lady to do something so boorish. It was evidently unthinkable for a woman of the archducal family to lay her hands on an enemy. Lady Georgine was said to have done precisely that when dispatching her husband to advance her plans, but the woman in front of me had no such resolve. At the very least, should you not make it clear in your report that Lord Ferdinand is still alive, I asked. I really was running out of options. That would result in Mother scolding me, would it not? Besides, nobody will get in or out of the manor replenishment hall. I removed the registration face stones. See? She held them up. As long as these are with me, that door will remain firmly shut. Lord Ferdinand will die with time. In other words, even if Lord Ferdinand somehow managed to escape the magic circle, he would not be able to leave the hall. So he'll run out of mana or starve, I didn't want to displease Lady Detlinde, plus this was a plan devised by Lady Georgine of all people. I could guess that she had accounted for her daughter's shortcomings. Perhaps she had given someone else the secret duty of double-checking the outcomes and providing a more accurate report? So this guy does not love Lady Detlinde like he says. So he was essentially using her. He's tricking her, essentially. Okay, that makes more sense. In any case, I decided not to push the matter any further. It wasn't like I could contact Lady Georgine. Lanzanov's communication methods didn't work here. And my lack of a staff meant I couldn't send ordinances, so the most I could do was smile and escort my companion to her carriage, lavishing her with praise all along the way. I was simply bemoaning my own inability to enter the hall. I said, were the restriction not in place, these beautiful hands of yours would not need to be sullied at all. It was not my intention at all to offend you. Oh, very well, I shall forgive you. May we meet again soon. I just need to hold out a little while longer, then I can end this farce. I knew it! Knew it! He's only using you! Ha ha ha! That's what you get! After watching the carriage depart, I climbed into my own. Lady Detlinde refused to ride with me unless there was a third party with us, such as Lady Georgine or Lady Letizia. She was all over me in public, but she was unmarried, so she was presumably trying hard to keep a respectable amount of distance between us. It was pointless, though. Despite her best efforts, everyone looked at her with scorn and derision. I assumed that either her standards were twisted or she was operating under some kind of profound misunderstanding. Exhausting. Once inside my carriage, I couldn't help heaving a sigh. My cousin Giordano, who usually stood behind me at the countenance of a servant, grinned and plopped down next to me. The flat expression he wore to appease this country's nobles was nowhere to be seen. Everything's going as we hoped, Leonzio. Looks like we might actually make it through this. Seems to me like things are just getting started. Who's to say they'll keep going well? Not me, Giordano replied, merely shrugging at my attempt to chastise him. Well, we've got this face stone hunt tonight, and those girls ready to be transported, right? That should keep us going for now, even if opening the villa again will take us a while longer. Tonight, our envoys to Ahrensbach would go wild. We have received permission from Lady Detlinde and Lady Georgine to kill any and all nobles alongside with Lady Letizia. The former was annoyed at those who had chosen not to support her as the next ob, whereas the latter wanted to eliminate anyone who might get in her way down the line. As for us, we needed as many high-quality face stones as we could get. All of our intentions just happened to align. Man, Jurgen nobles sure are terrifying. They don't show their remote enemies any mercy whatsoever. Still, this would finally restore power to the royal family. And if all goes well, House Corelli will enjoy a stronger and more secure position. There were 3 main houses in Lanzanov: Corelli, Shentis, and Lowellery. They shared their names with Jurgen Flowers, and the 3 rooms found in the villa where Lanzanov's princesses were sent. I didn't know too much about the villa, only what the king had told me. To cover the basics, there was meant to be 1 princess inside each of the 3 rooms at all times. They would attempt to bring forth sons, one of whom would receive a staff upon coming of age, and then be sent back to Lanzanov as its next king. Lanzanov princesses were taken only once every few generations to stop their Jurgen blood from becoming too thick. Their daughters would stay at the villa in the interim. After receiving an education in Jurgen, the next king would return home to be adopted by whomever he was to replace. The boy would naturally know very little about Lanzanov, having spent his entire life elsewhere, so a number of relatives, normally from his mother's side, would support him and teach him how to manage the country. During his rule, King Ciaffredo, my grandfather and the son of a Corelli princess, had agreed to marry his daughter to his successor, King Gervasio. The union had never amounted to much, however. It was unknown whether there had been a disagreement of some kind between the couple, or whether King Gervasio simply hadn't taken to his new wife. But although he had treated her with respect, he had never come to love her. Thus, when he had eventually come to power, his own house, the Wellier, and the family of his preferred wife in House Shentis had secured the most influence. Meanwhile, House Corelli had been pushed further and further away. Lanzanov was making steady technological advancements to compensate for its lack of face stones, and the world at large was now turning to power sources other than mana. A king wielding a staff was still necessary to maintain the capital, but in this day and age, the common opinion was that a royal family who provided nothing but mana wasn't necessary at all. Ha ha! Now, if they could just figure out how to make really good buildings, they wouldn't need the royal family at all. They could just rebuild the capital, you know? For me to stay in the castle as a royal, we needed a Corelli princess in the Adalgisa villa so that I could take a supportive role under the next king. And to have a princess in the villa, we needed to convince the Zent to reopen it. Lanzanov had protested its closure immediately after the Civil War, but to no avail. We had since concluded that our only option was to establish connections with someone who could influence Jurgen Smith's throne. So we had started waiting for a chance and change in power. Then, about 2 years ago, an envoy had returned with a letter from Lady Georgine. The late Ob Ahrensbach has been very much alive at the time. Is the King of Lanzanov on familiar terms with the Sovereign Knight Commander by chance? As far as correspondence went, it had seemed exceptionally bare. She had not even included the name of the Sovereign Knight Commander, despite him being central to her question. The Sovereign Knight Commander has a solemn duty to protect the Zent, King Gervasio had said. I recall that he attended the throne, but rarely ever visited the villa. Not once did we greet one another, so I cannot say we were at all associated. The question is, does she mean the same Knight Commander I remember? It would not be at all unusual for the position to have changed hands. Still, even if no such association existed, there was a valuable opportunity for us to form a connection with the Zent. We would not let it slip through our fingers. In no time at all, the castle had been abuzz with a speculation by the King of Lanzanov. Had Lady Georgine met King Gervasio or his predecessor King Sciaffredo, whatever. Had the meeting occurred when the Zent visited the villa or when the Zent and the king exchanged greetings. There had also been the chance that someone either of the kings had gotten along with inside the villa had since become the Sovereign Knight Commander. Also, the theories had been thrown around, but even in the uproar, everyone had agreed on one thing. We had to make contact with them. Naturally, we hadn't been able to send King Gervasio to Ahrensbach if something happened to him. Lanzanov wouldn't have been able to have anyone to take his place. Someone else would need to open the negotiations as we had decided, someone who could secure the necessary details from Lady Georgine or this Sovereign Knight Commander, who could at least lay the groundwork for the reopening of the villa, and who could obtain and trade for as many face stones as possible in preparation for the worst-case scenario. There had been an explosive debate over who to send, but out of all the candidates, I had secured the position. If our plan goes well, Lanzanov will change forever, I said. Giordano nodded. Outside the window, we could see Lanzanov's ships approaching the port, a good sign. If everyone existed, I was barely able to contain my rising excitement as I waited our arrival at the Lanzanov estate. Oh, Lady Alstead, I said, I did not expect to see you here already. Since we have guests, I thought it best to arrive early. A messenger came just a moment ago regarding the ships. Their passengers should be here soon, I imagine. I could not see Lady Ditlinde anywhere, which meant she must have hurried into the estate upon her arrival. I was welcomed instead by her elder sister, Lady Alstead, the person who had actually died at Ahrensbach's foundation. Okay. The Zent had not granted her his recognition, but she was still the duchy's de facto ob. Lady Alstead was an archnoble in her early 20s. Her bright green eyes, blue almost purple hair, and sharp features made her easily comparable to Lady Georgine. But her personality wasn't similar at all. She was a quiet girl who rarely spoke and always seemed to have a close eye on the mood of those around her. From what I could tell, Lady Alstead was being tossed every which way by her mother and younger sister. By her mother's will, she had married an archnoble despite being the daughter of an ob, and for the sake of her mother and sister's plan, she had now died at Ahrensbach's foundation, all while having a young daughter of her own. Lady Alstead, this cannot be easy for you, I said. I still remember your declaration about not wanting to be the ob. Indeed, my thoughts on the matter have not changed, but it is not to say the situation does not benefit me. Lady Alstead's husband, Lord Blasius, had once been an archducal family member striving to become an ob. During the Civil War, however, he had been demoted to the rank of an archnoble because of his mother's duchy of birth. I wish to restore Lord Blasius to his former rank, she continued. If everything happens as mother has planned, it would even be possible to grant him Ahrensbach's foundational magic. Not to mention, there is still time for us to start giving our daughters the education of an archduke candidate. The Civil War really had nothing but bad results, huh? It's not hard to see why Lady Ditlinde curses the current Zent on every chance she gets. Well, it's not his fault. He didn't ask for this whole war to happen. Lanzanov is facing its own hardships as a result of the villa being closed, right? I pray that this plan goes well and that your country receives the assistance it needs. As we continued our conversation, we made our way into the estate. Lady Ditlinde's attendant was preparing tea in the parlor, while Lord Blasius, Lady Alstead's husband, was hanging around. They were treating what was meant to be the Lanzanov estate as a second home. Giordano must have made the same observation as he let out a sigh behind me. It wasn't that common for our people to be resigned or relegated to the back rooms where Lady Ditlinde came to visit. Alstead, has the door been opened yet? Lady Ditlinde asked. I did send you the key, you know. No, not yet. Though I thought it best to wait until your arrival. Mother instructed as much, did she not? Lady Detlende was considered to be Arensbach's awe, but Lady Alstead was the one actually in control of the Duchy's foundation. To preserve the illusion, Lady Georgine had given Lady Detlende firm orders to always be present for things that only the Ob could perform, such as opening certain doors or the border gates. You always follow Mother's orders to the letter, sister, Lady Detlende complained. I do not believe our guest will exercise much patience. Let us unlock it now before they arrive. Certainly, they must be in a hurry. The Lanzanov estate had a teleportation circle that was used to send princesses to the Indulgence Villa and welcome back kings. Only the Ob could open the door on Arensbach's side. Isn't hard to guess that the previous Ob Arensbach was assassinated to allow for open travel between Arensbach and the villa. I very much doubted it was the only reason. Lady Georgine had always had several, no matter what she did, but it was guaranteed to be one of them. And so, Lady Georgine had assassinated the previous Ob and gotten Lady Alstead to re-dye the foundation, allowing us to open the door to the teleportation room at our leisure. Or it should have been that simple, but at the very last moment during the Archduke Conference, it had been decided that the villa would go to a girl whom the Zent was adopting. Nice! That's Rosemine! She's getting the Indulgence Villa! Oh my god, that's kind of, what's Ferdinand gonna think about that? Oh, dear. The news could only be interpreted as a deliberate attempt to obliterate Lanzanov's hopes of the villa ever being reopened to accommodate new princesses. Since the announcement, cleaners, remodelers, and craftsmen bringing new furniture had started refrequenting the villa. At times, even members of the royal family had visited to check on their progress. They had made the teleporter practically unusable, which hadn't actually done much to impede Lady Georgine's plans, but it had caused problems for her co-conspirator, who was said to have agonized over such a grave miscalculation. Only now had the preparations finally been completed and the villa emptied of craftspeople, allowing the teleporter to be used without restraint. We had complete control over it in the villa until the next Archduke Conference when its new owner would arrive, but will his plans surely work? I told Jordan on our way here that we had no way of knowing whether things would go well, but I was wishing for Lady Georgine's success more than anyone. I shall open it then, Lady Alstead said. She slotted her key into place, and in the blink of an eye, a magic circle made from yellow light appeared on the door. It took me all the willpower I could muster not to cry out. Because of my time with Lady Detlende, I consider myself more knowledgeable of magics than most others from Lanzanov. But I'd never seen anything like this. It was surprising enough that the magic circle had appeared out of nowhere, but then the door began to open on its own. As I tried to swallow my shock, the nobles around me looked entirely stone-faced. This kind of magic was commonplace to them. Beyond the door was a pure white room. There was nothing of note inside except the magic circle drawn on the floor. That is a teleporter, Lady Detlende explained, brimming of pride. It will require mana here and on the other side, but it can transport people and goods. In the meantime, one of her attendants sent a letter explaining that we were ready on our end of the teleporter. Lady Alstead went behind a pillar and did something I couldn't quite see. There came a bright, momentary flash from the teleporter. On the other side, there are staffs. I took an unconscious step forward as if seduced by the sudden flash. I wanted one. I wanted my own staff. If only I could obtain one, I would be able to secure power on my own. I wouldn't need to wait for my little sister's child. I took another step, and the magic circle flashed again, this time for a little while longer. It spewed a fiery mix of black and gold light, shocking me to my senses and causing me to take a step back. Oh, they really were waiting after all. Welcome to Arensbach. The light faded to reveal Lord Bravo, the Sovereign Knight Commander, standing atop the mad teleporter. I gasped at how suddenly he had appeared. For all its technological advances, Lanzanov had nothing that could compare to large-scale magic. Lord Bravo, our other guests are due to arrive soon, Lady Detlende said. We received word that their ships have reached the port. The Knight Commander cast his eyes down, allowing a slight smile to grace his mouth. Ah, at last, I shall reunite with my lord. It has taken so long. I remember him saying what a blunder it was that preparations for the villa would prevent them from using the teleporter. We had meant to perform final checks during the summer funeral and then execute our plans in autumn, but work on the villa had delayed us until now. The man before us had found that more torturous than everyone. The fact that you were waiting means your preparations are now complete, I guess. I assumed that Lady Detlende asked. You have the means by which to make me Zent. Lord Robert looked across all those gathered and nodded at me and the others from Lanzanov. Everything is going according to plan. Our hopes will soon be fulfilled. There was something about his deep, weighty voice that made me want to believe it unconditionally. I could actually feel my chest heating up with anticipation. Will my hopes and dreams be fulfilled at last? Ah, Rabla, it has been so long, King Gervasio said, entering the estate after having arrived at the port. Oh, so he was on the ship. Okay. The Sovereign Knight Commander knelt before the King of Lanzanov, a sight so bizarre that I couldn't look away, and then replied, I welcome you, my one and only lord. Is he name sworn to him? That would be cool. That'd be bad, but it'd be cool too. I cannot apologize enough for failing to carry out your final order and allowing harm to come to Lady Valor Marlene. Let it weigh on your mind no longer. The fate that befell her was regrettable, but you had no power to prevent it. Such is the law of this land, which you have been made to endure for much too long. Let your burden finally be lifted. Who's Valor... That's my question. Who's Valor Marlene? I didn't recognize the name, but if she was a mutual acquaintance, she had to be someone from the Adulta Sevilla. Oh, is that his, is that Robert's old wife, the one he had wanted to marry? She had to be someone from the Adulta Sevilla. Upon my arrival in Arensbach, I discovered that Lord Robert had served as one of the villa's guard knights while our own King Gervasio was living there. He was the very reason King Gervasio had come this far. Our actions here will ultimately be for the greater good, Robert. If you would take me there, it is time to visit our old villa. At once, my lord. And the afterward. Okay. Okay, oh boy, the comics. A comfy life of my family. Another day in which Lady Rosemont continues to grow. Hartman's freaking ranting and raving, of course. Kinda gross. I don't know who is saying it. I think it's, Laisletta and Roderick or something. I don't know. Lady Avara is striving to ensure that all advanced copies will reach you as soon as possible. Mother, even though she's being all considerate as mother, I just don't feel the same joy. Hartman didn't want to deprive you of a rare opportunity to read at your leisure. Oh, Hartman. Because he's weird and annoying, right? And you can see and him extolling Rosamund's virtues, essentially. Okay, really makes you think. Let's see. Dang it. God damn it. My chest hit the dang thing. Oh my god. Downloading Mestanora's wisdom. Do not resist, accept it all. I want actual books, not just their knowledge. If there were a mountain of books, I'd be so happy. Wait, no, then it ended up being crushed to death again. Oh my god! Quiet down and accept Mr. Nora's wisdom. Quit thinking! Quit thinking! Cougar escort. Oddly, yes. He just standing there looking at her. Like, Might I escort you during my graduation? Come again? She's like, what? I think that was, Matthias. No, it was, which one was it? Matthias or Lorenz who escorted Adelie during the graduation. I cannot remember. Anyway, I'll get to work on everything and I'll see you guys in the next one whenever the next book comes out.